as we are going through the testing in the PTR, we're gonna notice some things changing for a few of these specs. Some are getting entire reworks like Vengeance, like Havoc, like the Rogue specs. Other are perhaps getting tuned in a few abilities, a few passives, or perhaps their rotation, the way they will play in the next patch will change because of the tier set, which will, go and focus, for example, a different ability, a different talent, etc., pushing you towards changing your talent build. So what we are doing today, as we wait on this Sunday for the Mythic raid testing to finish, to go over the results of the raid testing tomorrow, today instead we're going to focus on a few of the specs that are doing something particular in the patch, that have changed perhaps a little bit, the way they play, the way they build their spec, for example. Starting with one of the more changed specs planned for the next patch. Not necessarily an OP spec, not necessarily one of the most played spec. It still does have a healthy player base. We're talking about Fury Warrior. This is what you might be familiar with right now when it comes to Fury Warrior. The Fury Warrior right now is playing down the right side of their talent build. They are going for both Onslaught and for Ravager, and the result in damage is that you're still playing a lot around your Rampage, your Ravager, and more importantly your Raging Blow. Once you go into your casts to look at how in a Mythic Plus key you would look like, the most casted spells are going to be your Rampage and your Raging Blow, together with Whirlwind for AoE. This is changing once we go in the 10.2 patch, because this is the result of a Fury Warrior right now. If we make a straight one-to-one comparison on two Mythic Plus keys, you can find that now you have a Bloodbath, which is your empowered Bloodthirst from your tier set, as your main source of damage, and another thing we haven't seen in current version of Fury, which is Odin's Fury. You go back to the current version of Fury, there is a Ravager, and there is Raging Blow, there is Onslaught, of course, and there is no Odin's Fury compared to what happens in 10.2. There is also a much lower damage overall of Thunderous Roar compared to how it's going on right now in live. What changes this for starters for Fury Warrior is of course the tier set. The tier set now has a damage increase when you use Odin's Fury to your next Bloodthirst, a significant damage increase, both the damage and the crit, which is why you see here Bloodbath, which is your empowered version of Bloodthirst. And then you have a cooldown reduction 4-piece, where Bloodthirst critical strikes reduce the cooldown of Odin's Fury. So you have this repeating cycle where the more you Bloodthirst, the more you crit, the more the Odin's Fury cooldown gets reduced, so you get to use more Odin's Fury to empower more Bloodthirsts, so that the cooldown of Odin's Fury goes down, so you can use it more often. That's the cycle of the build of a Fury Warrior in the PTR, which is going away from the right side of their tree right now to take both Odin's Fury and your extra damage to Whirlwind as well as to Slam. No, you don't have to worry too much. Even with this talent, your amount of Slam usages is quite low. Yes, you have to use it a little bit, okay? Every once in a while. And you can see that even if you try to use it and maximize your talent, the damage at the moment is still tragic for Slam. You would have to buff this by like 500% to even make it a decent talent, but besides that, you're still going for quite a different build compared to what you're doing right now on live version of Fury Warrior. As I said, it's not that at the moment Fury is being exceptional. We have looked at the PTR when it came to the raid results, like for example the Mythic first boss, and Fury was doing, upper half DPS type of damage. Onigira, which is a pure single target boss, Fury was more or less in the same position. Council, which is a cleave boss, and Fury was doing significantly worse on cleave. Back to a more single target fight like Smolderon, Fury is also not doing that well. Larodar, single target with some adds, Fury is middle of the pack, so it's not one of the top, meta specs thought of for the next patch. It's just interesting to point out, to notice that they will be, and they are going to change quite a bit in the way they play, thanks to mostly the tier set. They've not been receiving that many balance tuning changes as a spec, this is just mostly the effect of the tier set. After Fury Warrior, we have another spec worth going over. This one though, it's about the damage they are doing. It's not as much as changing the way they play, changing the spec and the rotation like Fury. This is strictly about their damage increase, or rather their continuation of very high damage, because this is a spec that right now in live you see their top damage as almost being cute, almost being, you know, endearing, because the spec itself is weak. The spec itself is too squishy and too unreliable to be a meta spec, so you end up going, well, you know, at least they do good damage. But you know, it doesn't matter too much. However, in 10.2, this spec is also being drastically buffed in their defensiveness. It's becoming drastically more tanky, so their damage increase starts to become much more of a power point for them. If you go in the Mythic Plus keys in the PTR, you notice, for example, a Blood Decay doing 65,000 DPS in a 20 key. Then you go into another 20 key, there is a Guardian Druid, it's doing 86,000. There is a Prot Warrior doing 48,000, there is a Prot Paladin doing 65, and even a Vengeance Demon Hunter doing 74. So that's the range of the tank damage right now in the PTR, 60 to 70 on the high end. And those are the first 5 tanks, because then you have the 6th one with 136,000, which is Brewmaster Monk. And that's the main thing in the PTR. It is mostly the damage at the moment of Brewmaster Monk, which is far, far above the rest of the tanks. This is still, as I said, it's not that this is being given to Brewmaster Monk because of the tier set. You know, to be clear, the tier set of Brewmaster Monk is shit in terms of damage, in terms of damage increase. The 20% more damage to your Breath of Fire is irrelevant when your Breath of Fire is doing 4% of your damage. You doing extra Shadow Flame damage with your attacks is right here. It's 3.2% of your damage. Your old tier set was giving you roughly 5% more damage as a tank. This one is giving you roughly 5% more damage, so it's not that you have been buffed in terms of damage as a Brewmaster Monk. You are rather continuing to do top damage. The only difference is that now in 10.2 you are much more tanky, you are much more resistant thanks to the extra power to the absorb shield value of Celestial Brew and the passive healing given by your tier set, Charred Dreams. The same Charred Dreams, which does terrible damage as a damage source, as a healing source. It's actually much more powerful, this tier set, when it comes to defensiveness for Brewmaster. That is worth pointing out, because as I said, right now in live, the fact that Brewmaster Monks can do top damage, even if you go right now and you look at the current, you know, rankings in Mythic Plus for like tanks and damage, there you go. You have Brewmaster Monk 20%, 15 to 20% above every other tank. Who cares? Nobody plays Brewmaster over Guardian Druid anyways. But if you go into the next patch with Brewmaster Monk being significantly more tanky and still doing their top damage, that is what might be very relevant for considering Brewmaster a meta tank in Mythic Plus. That's the main thing for this tank in the next patch. Having been significantly buffed in tankiness without really receiving nerfs to their already top tier damage. That's the win of Brewmaster right now in 10.2. Now, talking about damage and possibly making you relevant in the next patch, we move from a tank to a healer, and we can find somewhat of a same story in here, because you have right now, for example, Mistweaver Monk, which is doing 20,000 damage in a Mythic Plus key. You have a Holy Priest doing 28,000, another different Holy Priest doing 17,000, you have a Holy Paladin doing 21,000, a different Holy Paladin doing 20,000, you have another Holy Paladin doing 25,000, even a Resto Druid doing 30,000 with 2 different damage trinkets, and then you have a Discipline Priest doing 48,000 DPS. This is something we touched as well when we were going over the rework of Discipline Priest, gaining a lot more damage, not just thanks to their tier set, which does give them some more value to their smite casts, but more importantly to the uptime of their Mindbender. Tier set of Priest gives you smite with a 100% chance to cast an additional time during Shadow Covenant. This, in short, allows you to spam Smite to continuously reduce the cooldown of Mindbender, because thanks to your talent setup, you're going for Void Summoner, which gives you cooldown reduction to your Mindbender if you're casting Smite. So this creates a situation where the uptime of your Mindbender is extremely high. By taking away all of the other damage sources other than Mindbender, you can find the uptime of Mindbender being constant. It's a 90+% uptime of damage of your Mindbender, and also talented in Inescapable Torment. This is the main power. The AoE damage of Inescapable Torment you can get from your talent tree. And that's without even using, DPS trinkets or DPS embellishments, for example. This is just straight up doing with your own standard rotation. You are at the moment far and above the highest damage out of all of the healers when it comes to Mythic Plus and when it comes to AoE. Not that it changes in single target, you are possibly even stronger in single target when it comes to damage compared to other healers. So that's the other point right now, not just Brewmaster doing top damage as a tank, but also Discipline Priest doing top damage as a healer. Discipline Priest has been changed way more than Brewmaster. They have way more changes to their rotation compared to Brewmaster, but the result is the same. Right now, they are bringing the highest damage out of any healer in 10.2. What we have left now, we went through the standout DPS change in terms of rotation for Fury and the two highest damage dealing specs for tanks and for healers. We have a few other interesting picks right now amidst all of these. We do have the continued divide of a Balanced Druid in how effective they are in AoE, especially as you can see here, the big ones, the big sources of AoE damage, the big pools, and the usage of their Starfall. Sure, it doesn't look like peak gameplay, right? You're pressing basically 4 buttons throughout all of this, so, yeah, there are better ways to spend your time than playing Balanced Druid, but at the moment, in the PTR, they have remained, perhaps they have become even more than they are now, a funneled spec into doing AoE damage, consistent AoE damage. You can see here, the damage starts ramping at 1640 and peaks down at 1710. It's a 30-second long window. It's not exactly a super short burst window. You need time to ramp up as a Balanced Druid. And besides that, the weaknesses start popping up for the spec, particularly in the raid and particularly in single target. This is not really being changed by their tier set, which has just been nerfed in the PTR. You got a buff to the 2-piece, but the 4-piece set bonus was nerfed down to a maximum of 10% more damage, so that doesn't help too much Balanced Druid and their problems right now in the PTR. We can also see quite a few of the effects of the changes to Demonology Warlock. Demo has received a fix, which was expected before demo locks start crying, when Blizzard added the change that now your Doomfiend from your tier set is going to spawn more often and more regularly, instead of having the Doomfiend spawned and then miss 3, 4, 5 Doom brands casts in a row without a summon of your demon, feeling terrible. Now it's much more stable. However, they also had to nerf the damage, because the damage was getting too high. Doomfiend and Doombrand were getting upwards of doing 20+% of your damage, even 30% of your damage in AoE, because of the power of this Doombolt volley. Now we can see the damage is more back in line. Now we have a 9-ish% damage from your Doombrand and your Doomfiend. Over here we have a Doombrand at 5.3, a Doomfiend at 5.5. It's about 11% more damage of your tier set. So now with the nerf, with the fix to this tier set, you are much more in line. It's not nearly as just out of control as before. Now it's more consistent and the damage has been reduced as a result. You are still changing quite a bit compared to before. Now your Felguard is doing even more damage than before as a Demo Warlock. Some players might still not enjoy the theme of this Demo Warlock set with what you were doing. They might not be enjoying, for example, their Tyrant now being a joke compared to before. You no longer having to focus around big, gigantic bursts of cooldown, which is what Demonology was known for. Even in this very same key, in this very same fortified key, the peaks of Demo are barely reaching 300,000 twice. Here, barely, and then here for a bit. If we stay within the same key and we look at a red paladin, you will find 300,000 not only being surpassed thrice, but also going well over 400,000. You can even stay in the same build with a fire mage, which also can break 400,000. This is no longer the case for a demonology warlock. So up to this point, these were 4 of some of the more changed specs right now on the PTR, or specs that will continue to have something very valuable in the next patch. Right now, we have highlighted today 1 tank, 1 healer, 1 melee DPS, and 1 ranged DPS. So we went through all 4 of the different roles, highlighting 1 particular spec right now on the PTR. This is as a pit stop before tomorrow, where we will go over and check the results of way more of these specs in how they did in the latest round of PTR tuning when it comes to mythic raid bosses. So we will see even more which changes were brought by the 5th round of balance tuning that happened a few days ago, and which effects did it have on the performance of the specs in the PTR, in the raid at the very least. So for now, with the highlighting of these 4 particular specs in the PTR and the different thing they are doing compared to before, compared to live or compared to previous versions of the PTR builds, we are now leaving each other to the rest of this Sunday. I'm speaking from the past because obviously it's dark outside and I posted this mid-afternoon, so clearly I come from the past or the future, whichever way. We are now saying our goodbyes. Thanks, of course, as usual, to all of the Patreon supporters for the contribution and the help to the growth of the channel, which, as usual, can still be given for free. You can like and comment down below, as well as subscribe to the channel itself. So, with these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, once more, I am going to trust the meteorologists who said that this Sunday was going to be the last day of heat before we go back to actual autumn temperatures.